Hey, it's Feltbuzz. I am doing an author reading of Our Last Hope, which is part one of the new Exquisite Corpse story, which is a collaboration between different writers. If you like to know a bit more about this one and what the setup is, you'll see a link there that says the setup can be found here, so you can click on that from my story. Anyway, this is Our Last Hope, written by me. Well, part one is. Maisie was bored. Contrary to her expectations, the alien invasion and the subsequent destruction of the Earth was not the exciting, action-packed, adrenaline-pumping, hero-creating, world-changing events the movies and comic strips had prepared her for. Well, she conceded, looking through the thick glass porthole at the swirling clumps of rock that used to be the Earth. It had been world-changing. But the endless walking, the hiding, the searching for the farmhouse had been, as poor old Fred used to say about pretty much everything, a bit of a snore fest. Aside from the moments when she was scared witless, of course, so frightened she thought she might throw up, and then there was the time that she did vomit all over that half-eaten corpse. Now, to top it all, not only was she stuck in this battered trash can floating through space with this strange bunch of losers, Danny had just told her the internet was never coming back, so she'd not only lost her home and her best friend, but also the very thing that made her feel like she mattered. She wasn't thick. Obviously, she knew the internet and everything and anyone else she'd ever known was dead, but hearing someone else say it somehow made it feel more real. She felt as though she'd been slapped in the face. Staring at the collection of debris that used to be the Earth, Maisie wondered whether it meant something that she had somehow managed to survive. Was it part of a bigger plan? She'd never really believed in a god. She'd never been given cause to. Fred used to say that the universe was bigger than any god. It had its own plans for her, he said, and the universe would make sure things worked out fine for both of them. But it hadn't really worked out so well for Fred, had it? The universe had sent the beings that killed him, or at least they travelled a long way through it to do the job. She shivered as the image of Fred's final moment flashed through her brain, paralysing her for a moment. Trying not to let the others see her panic, she took slow, deep breaths, just like Fred had taught her. Control your breathing. Bring down your heart rate, Maisie girl. Take control of your mind and body. Don't let no one or nothing control you. You have the power. You. No one else. Shit. She'd never felt so powerless. She missed Fred so much. Everyone she had ever loved or cared about had left her or been taken from her. If the universe had a plan, it was a cruel one. Can you believe it? They're at it again. Maisie looked up at Danny. He winked and nodded over to the other side of what the professor laughingly referred to as the lounge. Ali was standing nose to nose with Sid again, both of them shouting, neither of them listening. Sid's briefcase was still in her hand, the chain attached to her wrist rattled as she gestured. Just think, this is the future of the human race. Danny's eyes twinkled. Despite herself, Maisie smiled back. Danny was charming. When he was talking to you, you felt you were important. You couldn't help but like him. In her 11 years on Earth, Maisie had met more than her fair share of Dannys. She had made the error of mistaking surface friendliness for actual friendship before. She'd learned to tread carefully. They haven't worked out that their arguments are pointless now. Of course, they always have been. Maisie looked into Danny's eyes. So what is important now? Survival. Same as it's always been. Doing whatever it takes to live long enough to take the next breath. That's a bit sad. What about friendship? What about love? Love. Danny laughed. Love, friendship, whatever you want to call it, ain't necessary for survival, kid. It's just something we invented to make people feel better about life. He looked back over towards Ali and Sid. Maisie saw something flash across his face, an expression too fast for her to read. but she knew she didn't like it. "Where's the professor?" she asked suddenly. Danny shrugged. "Engine room, I think." Maisie looked over to the trapdoor that led down to the engine room. Another massive disappointment. The trapdoor looked as if it used to be part of a car. In fact, she was fairly sure it was the trunk of an old Citroën 2CV. She used to have a picture of her mother sitting on the bonnet of one when she was a student in Paris. That picture had gone forever now. Maisie looked around her. The whole ship had the appearance of something that had been cobbled together in someone's garden shed. No swishing doors opening onto a shiny, computer-filled flight deck. No teleportation devices. Nothing looked futuristic like it did in the movies. Hell, most of it looked as if it came from the last century, way before she'd been born. The professor told them the navigation system was constructed by linking some computers. IBMs, she called them, found in an attic. Ran on something called DROS, or something like that. She looked at Danny. "Why do you think they let us go?" "Who?" "The aliens. They travel across the universe, invade Earth, kill everything, all life in Earth. Every last living thing. And then, as if that wasn't enough, they blow up the planet. But before they press the destruct button, they let us go." She gestured at the battered metal surface structure around her. "In this shit heap, with only just enough power to escape the atmosphere. They could have finished the job easily, blown us up as we left the Earth's orbit, or as we drifted past that huge, evil-looking warship. But they let us limp on. Why?" Danny shrugged. "I have difficulty enough understanding how other people think, let alone aliens. Perhaps we amuse them. Does it really matter? We're alive. That's all that counts." Maisie shrugged. She supposed that was something. But there was something weird about the whole thing. How come the professor was the only one on Earth who seemed to have advanced knowledge about the alien invasion? Fred said she'd been posting things on the internet for years. That's how he knew where to go. How come with all the technology that the USA and Russia and China and who the fuck knew where else had developed over the last century, only some nutty old professor living in an old abandoned farmhouse in rural France was able to get a spacecraft off the ground in one piece? Just didn't add up. "Don't you think they might come after us?" Danny shrugged. "Maybe. I don't know." He gestured back at Sid and Ali. "Perhaps they're waiting for us to beg at them to blow us up. Don't know how much more of this I can take." Maisie watched as Sid pushed Ali and Ali pushed back and then tried to grab the briefcase. "Just face it, you ain't no one anymore. You ain't worth shit," Annie shouted. "At least I was someone," Sid hissed, using a suitcase to take a swipe at Ali's head. "What have you ever achieved? Knocking those of us who got off our asses and made something of ourselves. You're pathetic." Maisie looked at Danny. He was right. This had to stop. She sighed and stood up. "Look, you two, don't you think we've had enough things to worry about now? If we're going to survive, we've got to start working together." Ali and Sid stared at each other, both breathing heavily. "She started it," Ali said. Behind her, Maisie heard Danny chuckle. She raised her hand, stopping Sid before she could respond. "You guys are supposed to be the grown-ups." Both of them stared at her. "All I've heard since we got here is you two arguing like little kids. Sid, who cares if you were some kind of financial wizard that made so much money you didn't know what to do with it? It means nothing now." Sid didn't say anything, just stared at her feet. Maisie saw Ali smirk. "And you, Ali, all your protests, your roadblocks, your occupying this and occupying that, they didn't save the world, did they?" She pointed out of the porthole at the remains of the planet. "Didn't save shit. Our planet's gone." She felt tears well up in her eyes. Everything's gone. So please, can we put all our differences aside and try to work out what the hell we're going to do next? Annie and Sid looked at the floor and nodded simultaneously. Maisie heard Danny chuckle again and then gave her a round of applause. "And that isn't helping either, Danny. Humanity's last hope. I'm only 11 years old, and I seem to be the only one who's taking this shit seriously. Sorry, Maisie, Ali said. Maisie saw Sid mouth the word sorry, too. She heard Danny chuckle again. I assume the prof has some kind of plan, Sid said, nodding at the trapdoor. After all, she was the one that managed to get us all together. We need to start repopulating the human race, Ali said suddenly. Sid looked at Ali, then at Maisie, and then they all turned to Danny. Don't look at me, girls, he chuckled. I'm not going to be much help. Ali looked disappointed. Maisie couldn't read Sid's expression. Not that it's any of your beeswax, he said, pushing himself up and coming to stand next to Maisie. But a few years back I had gender reassignment surgery. I may well have all the right bits, but they won't be up to the job you have in mind. Sid opened her mouth, about to say something, when the engine room trapdoor swung open with a crash. The professor's head popped up through the hole. I hated to break it to you, she said. We have rather a big problem. And that's where my part ends, and it's over to Block Curator. I'm not sure whether he's posted the link to his part of the story. If he has, I will find it and I will post it in this in here. If not, go and check him out. Follow him. He's worth following. Always good. So yeah, and I will re-steam it, so you will find it if you follow me. Hope you enjoyed my part of the story, and I hope you enjoy the rest of it, and have a great day, and love you, and steam on. Cheers, guys. Bye.